Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today we have the patch notes to go over. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick out the parts that I think are the most important and explain why. So let's go ahead and dive into the patch notes. And as you know, patch is dropping tomorrow, September 7th at 11 a.m. Central Time. So be ready for that. So just going over the table of contents really quick, because a lot of the stuff we've already covered in previous videos. We have the Rune Master, we have its skills, Frost Claw, we have Rune Prisons, we have one-shot and lost catches, we have the localization, the Monolith of Fate, and all of that we've already covered. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right down to number 7 and start with cosmetics. Cosmetics, there will be 2 new portal cosmetics, the Arcane Orrery and the Rune Gate. They added 2 new back slot cosmetics where your backpack or your cape goes. There'll be Ortrian's Pride and the Shards of Arcanum. And then they fixed the bug where the Brash Skullin from Ardent Champion supporter packs did not appear in your list of pets. Quick change to the ladder. The ladder window is now drawn on the top of all other windows, preventing the continue button overlapping it in Arena. Opening the ladder while in Arena now automatically displays the ladder you're currently competing on, and ladder entries now show that abilities that players have specialized rather than what is on their action bar. This does not apply to existing entries. What's cool about that is a lot of people might try and confuse you by switching their skills later or by having different ones on their action bar than they actually have specialized. So for people that are trying to copy a build that doesn't have a build guide, this obviously led to some mass confusion. Endgame experience requirements have changed, and a lot of people are probably a little saddened by this or maybe even mad about it, but for me, I like it because I usually hit level 100 well before I've got the gear that is really endgame for min-maxing, and that can take weeks sometimes to even get. So increased XP requirements for level 81 plus from 80 to 85 takes about 10% more, 85 to 90 takes about 30% more EXP, 90 to 95 takes about 70% more EXP, and 95 to 100 takes 250% more XP, which means it's going to take you about 2.5 times longer to go from 95 to 100, which is actually going to slow you down. You can get there in a weekend right now, so this will probably make it take 3 or 4 days now instead, depending on how you're leveling, how high in corruption you are, or whether you're pushing high waves in the arena. There's still ways to really get a massive boost to your experience depending on how far you made it into the end game. For the grace period, fix the bug where the 15-second countdown could start before the client was fully connected to the server, potentially leading to being dead on arrival. I've noticed where I've taken damage before my screens actually appeared and I've been able to see what's happening or even react to it. Moving during the 15-second countdown now ends the grace period after 2 seconds rather than immediately, so you still have a little bit of a grace period even when you're ending the grace period. And players with grace period active are no longer targeted by enemies. Improved how time remaining is displayed on the grace period icon. So some nice additions to the grace period, and should hopefully make it to where you're not dying before you even have time to react when you first enter echoes or new areas. A change to vitality. A lot of people seem to be upset about this. I actually really like this change, and that's coming from someone who really enjoys the Void Knight, which is particularly the mastery that most people point out when it comes to vitality because of some of the damage scaling that is affected along with it, or the fact that Void Knight overall doesn't have as many damage reductions as some of the other masteries, and so having additional health helps offset that. So each point of vitality now grants 6 health from 10. For me, health has always been a stat stick that you can get on both your suffixes on most pieces of gear. So vitality only giving health to me really wasn't a big thing. It was just another health stat. So now that they've changed it to where it grants you 1% necrotic and poison resistance instead of 2% increased health regen and a little less life, and because vitality is a prefix, now you can work towards getting some of your suffix slots opened up in some builds that you might need them for something else by using vitality to get those resistances. So a little bit of a trade-off there, a little less life, but a way to have some more flexibility in some builds to possibly open up a suffix where you didn't previously had or had to have, necrotic or poison resist there instead of being able to stack vitality instead. So excited to see the changes around that. I really like when your stat sticks, your int and your vitality and all that aren't so one-dimensional. So I think this is actually pretty big for it. It's a very healthy change. And vitality before was something that everyone put in the slots that you could put it, on the helm, on your chest, on your boots, and it just, it was like mandatory. So I like that it's changing a little bit so it's not so mandatory and has a little bit more flexibility. Some other changes that they have: your character list is now ordered by when that character was last modified, saved, or basically played. Your character can now change direction more quickly for a brief time of period after starting to move. This improves positioning responsiveness. Minions now follow you through player portals, fixing issues where they would get stuck behind in zone transitions, i.e. climb down at the start of the Imperial Majacka. And they changed minion AI so that they no longer run back and forth when you give them an enemy target outside their normal leash range. So some good things for minions. They should feel a little bit better. Alright, diving into the skill section, we do have some changes with quite a few skills. Arcane Ascendance, the Shocking Expanse grants 40% shock chance from 30, Slow Breathing grants 12% reduced mana drain from 10, the Cosmic Insight grants 15% increased cooldown recovery from 10, but is no longer multiplicative with other sources of increased cooldown recovery speed. This is a buff unless you had more than 50% increased cooldown recovery from other sources, which is quite a bit. You'd have to have it on a couple pieces of gear and through some passives, so it's probably a buff in most situations. And Mana Surge grants 6 mana on kill from 5, so most of those are buffs for the skill, so it should feel a little better. Assemble Abomination no longer prioritizes attacking enemies near the player. It will instead target the enemy nearest to itself. This will avoid the issue where Abomination struggles to reach enemies in densely packed groups near the player, and will overall improve its killing speed slightly due to spending less time traveling to the next enemy to attack. I like this change for it. Rapacious Protection now also causes the Abomination to prioritize enemies close to the player, restoring the original defensive behavior. So you actually get a choice. If you liked it before, you can just put a point to the node and make it that way, or if you like the new way, you just leave it alone and let it do its new thing. Black Hole has a ton of changes, and it's been a long time since I've used Black Hole, but hopefully it's going to be used a little bit more in this patch. Base damage and damage effectiveness per second increased to 18 and 300% from 7.5 and 125%. That is a huge boost to damage. Time dilation grants 25% chance to blind every second from 10%, but the max points was reduced down to 4 from 5. So essentially you still get a much higher chance, and you can spend 1 less point doing so. I really hate those nodes that take more than 4 points into them to really max out what you need out of it, so this is a good change for it. Rifts no longer grant less damage dealt from 10% less. Increased cooldown recovery speed increased to 20% from 10. Now grants 15% less pull area and 15% less pull strength from 10% of reduced all. So a bit more of a debuff to the pull and the pull area, but it no longer has the less damage taken, which is huge because this was kind of a mandatory node for you to take for that increased cooldown speed so that you could spam it more often. Absolute Zero grants 25% chance to chill enemies every second from 5%, max points reduced to 4 from 5, another good change. Heat Wave grants 2% ignite chance per second for every 1% uncapped fire resistance from 20% ignite chance per second. I like that because now if you really stack into fire resist, there's definitely a way to get 1, 2, maybe even 3 stacks per second being applied depending on how much you really want to put into that fire resist. Much better than the 20% ignite chance per second from before. So Ignite Black Hole, definitely a possibility now. We'll have to play around with it here in the patch. Cascade Fracture no longer says second black hole is half as effective. This reduced effectiveness was never applied, so apparently it will still work the same as it did before, but the wording is now fixed on the tooltip. Armageddon no longer adds 200 to Black Hole's mana cost, now uses Meteor's tree, and the damage modifiers of Black Hole's tree no longer apply to the meteors. Whoa. Consumes Meteor's mana cost for every meteor cast by Black Hole, but will not cast Meteor while you have negative mana. This is huge. We have been asking for a long time for Armageddon to finally use the Meteor skill tree. So I really like this change. I definitely see Meteor and Black Hole, along with the Craterborn with some buffs to Fireball, which we'll get over later, being a huge playstyle now. So I really like this. Fix the bug where if you had 1 point in Binary Star but less than 3 points in Scorching, you could not allocate Infusion, so they fixed some of the mapping. Infusion grants 18 ward per second from 10, and you can have 5 points now instead of 3. Massive grants 15% increased area from 10% and can have up to 4 points allocated from 5, which still gives you overall a little bit more increased area if you really max it out. Deep Space grants 90% freeze rate multiplier from 75, but can have 5 points allocated from 6. Gravity's Guile grants 35 physical damage per point. Scorching can have 5 points allocated from 6, so they took some points out of a lot of them, which is going to make it just a little bit different on the whole mapping and where you put points. But overall, the Armageddon node is the biggest thing. Using that Meteor skill tree, I really like those synergies between skills, and that's one I've been waiting for a really long time. So I am super happy with the boost to Black Hole's damage and that it now uses Meteor skill tree. So definitely going to be trying that out in this next patch. Bone Curse, which has been bugged for a really long time and taken advantage of, especially when it comes to arena pushing, has finally had the bug fixed. It's also had some new things to it. So Cursed Limbs has new functionality. After directly casting Bone Curse, You also cast Bone Curse on hit for the next few seconds, but Bone Curse costs more mana. This effect can occur more than once per second. Bone Curse cast indirectly by this node can't apply Cursed Limbs and does not consume mana. Fix the bug where applying Bone Curse through Cursed Limbs caused the Bone Curse to inherit the damage modifiers of that skill that applied it, which is why sometimes the damage was absolutely insane. And Bone Curse's Illusion of Pain reduces the duration of Cursed Limbs and Cursed Ground by 50% from 75%. Flame Ward, Dilation grants 12% increased duration from 11 and 6% mana efficiency from 11%. Costs a little more, but it'll last just a tiny bit longer. Shrewd Shielding can now have 3 points allocated from 5, and Retribution grants 40% more damage from 30%. So a bit of a damage boost, lasts a little bit longer, gonna be a little bit more spendy. Ice Barrage. Sleep Fire now puts the player at negative mana equal to your max mana for its duration instead of negative mana 10 times. This prevents abuse cases centered around missing mana such as Font of the Erased. So I believe that is used for Ward. It's going to change things a little bit, but it's not one that I've played too much in detail. Meteor has some changes. Cycle of Fire causes you to gain 10 ward from casting Fireball with Craterborn from 8, a little bit more ward. Infernal Column increases mana cost by 15% from 25, be a little cheaper. Aftermath restores 16% of mana from 15. Force of Impact grants 50% increased stun chance from 40 and 25% increased stun duration from 20, a bit of a boost. Shattering Star grants 50% chance for Shrapnel from 34% and can have 2 points instead of 3, saves you a point and you can still have that 100%. Shrapnel, Rapid Breakup grants 40% increased shrapnel speed and range from 30%, but can have 3 points allocated from 4. So a couple of things that'll let you have a couple of extra points to play around with in the Meteor skill tree. And they fixed the bug where Jagged Fragments had no effect. Summon Volatile Zombie now gains a damage over time minion tag when you take the Vomit node. I don't know if it was scaling before. I assume since it was missing the tag that it wasn't, or maybe this is just a tooltip fix. Either way, it might be something we have to test because there are plenty of ways to get damage over time from minions, especially on that Necromancer build, and perhaps it'll be a great way to play it. Static Orb Overcharge Detonation has adjusted functionality. 3% more orb hit damage per 1 mana cost, from 3% more orb damage per 1 mana cost. This is probably going to be seen as a nerf to this skill, and I don't know exactly how it's going to feel when you play it, but having all orb damage means all the sub-skills and everything with it would be doing more damage, and now that it's just the hit damage of the orb, it definitely changes some things when it comes to how that skill is going to feel in action. Volcanic Orb Pyroclastic Speed grants 12% increased cast speed and 12% increased orb speed from 20% increased orb speed, so you can now cast a little faster and it won't fly away a little as fast. And I've always liked it when Volcanic Orb kind of stays more in place, because that's how you can really target it and have it do a lot of damage to a single target. Granted, that target isn't moving around too much. For uniques, there was 21 new uniques added, 4 uniques that dropped from exiled mages, 8 uniques intended for the Rune Master, and then just 9 others for general gameplay on all the other classes. Changes to the Apogee of Frozen Light now grants minions 14 to 24% cold necrotic damage to chill enemies from 18 to 33. It's a bit of a nerf to both the damage and to the chill chance on attackers when hit. And then expending a stack of Frozen Vengeance grants minions 24% more damage to chilled enemies from 30. To be fair, if you're looking at the Ice Crow build that I just put out for Beastmaster, this doesn't really affect it at all because we never were able to actually get the stacks of Frozen Vengeance due to the fact that we weren't having minions die. We had companions that stay alive the whole time. So not a big change for that, but for some Necromancer builds, it's a bit of a change. We got some changes to some uniques. Apostate's Sanctuary no longer grants 8 to 14 melee necrotic damage. It no longer grants 360 to 480 health. It now grants 6 to 10 vitality and also grants plus 2 health per vitality, which still for that vitality it's going to give you a little bit less, but overall it's just a huge loss to health because even at 10 vitality it's nowhere near the 360 to 480 health range that you were getting before. It does grant 8 ward per second during rebuke from 6, but I don't think that's enough to offset how much health that you're actually losing there, so big nerf to that unique. Bastion of Honor also saw some changes, and a lot of people, I mean, this is a huge nerf to Bastion of Honor, but to be fair, it needed it because it wasn't fair that you could throw Bastion of Honor, get 100% block from nearby enemies on any class. whether it be a mage, a caster, it didn't even matter. So now you have 1% block chance per 1 strength. So if you have 100 strength, you'd have 100% block chance like it was before, but you'd have to really build into strength for that to be possible. And there's only a few classes that really benefit from building around strength. So just throwing it on a caster isn't going to be as good anymore. They changed the base type from the kite shield to the old kite shield. This reduces block chance to 14% from 25 and block effectiveness down to 320 to 400 from a 600 to 800 range, and adds 4 to 10 strength. Is rare and has a lower chance of having legendary potential. So Bastion of Honor, huge nerf, but could still be good for some classes, especially ones based around strength. And with some other minor changes to some other uniques, but nothing too major that's worth going over. For the campaign, they have some changes. They've updated the presentation of various quests throughout the game. Examples include dialogue improvements, small zone layout changes, visual effect and animation timing improvements, adjusting and removing quest pulses, and additional lore notes. Greatly improved visuals throughout Chapter 4, 6, and 7, and of course with the patch dropping tomorrow with a new mastery, we're going to be leveling a rune master, so we'll be able to go through those chapters and see all those new areas, as well as look for the locations of the one-shot caches that will be in some of those areas, I assume, through the campaign that we'll be able to find for the first time. Updated the visuals you click on for zone transitions, improved multiple zone transitions that were hard to click, and improved texture quality for NPCs throughout the game. And then a big one for enemies, 𝐿aGaunt, big change to 𝐿aGaunt. Finally, the days of bugs with it are gone, and all builds should be able to do all their normal damage. So trying to target it with like Devouring Orbs or Abyssal Orb off of Devouring Orbs for the Auto Bomber and not being able to target 𝐿aGaunt's body was always something that really killed the DPS of a build. But 𝐿aGaunt has been reworked for phases 1 and 3 of the fight, both campaign and monolith versions. You can no longer directly attack 𝐿aGaunt. Instead, you're attacking the 2 large tentacles, one at each end of the arena, that share health with each other and with 𝐿aGaunt. 𝐿aGaunt will still attack as normal. The tentacles attack the same way as regular 𝐿aGaunt tentacles with the same damage, but they will attack in a larger area. This change was made to bypass the numerous bugs that occurred due to trying to attack a boss that was so far away from and below the walkable area, which leads to a ton of targeting problems. Fix 𝐿aGaunt tentacles being tricky to hit with some projectiles like Fireball, fix 𝐿aGaunt's tentacles swipe attack not hitting in multiplayer, and added a ground visual effect around 𝐿aGaunt tentacles, so you should be able to see the area the tentacles are going to hit, especially in that larger area now. So I'm excited for that. That one has always bugged me throughout the campaign. And then there's just a ton of bug fixes, not going to go over all of them, just point out a couple of them. One being that if you specialize in a skill and then refund your passive such a way that you no longer have access to that skill, the specialization tree no longer applies to that skill when used, even if you're still technically specialized into it and have points put out. So that's a big thing that people would try and, you know, just for a little extra min-maxing, they tried to build around that, which is technically an exploit. It will now no longer be able to apply that. So that's a big change. I really like that because that's one way that a lot of people were just trying to, you know, take advantage of the system a little bit more. If you regain access to the skill, your special trait will apply again. So if you accidentally reduce too many passives, say you're just respecking your passives and go under, and it takes it away for a second, as soon as you put the passives, you don't have to go respec that whole tree again. It'll still be there. Just won't use it whenever you're below the threshold of points required to use it. And that's going to be it for the patch notes. A lot of good things in there. A couple of skills that weren't really usable before, such as like Black Hole. Really excited for that. Really excited for the Rune Master. Excited to see the new areas. Tell me what you're most excited for in the comments below. And tomorrow, I'll be on Twitch with you guys to start a Rune Master and play it for the first time ever. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll have a 1 to 75 guide that works well. And then after that, we'll work into some endgame builds with it and see what the best build we can get out of it by the end of the week. So excited to see you guys tomorrow, and as always, stay safe, travelers.